Hello and welcome, listeners, to the third episode of The Responsible Edge, a weekly podcast dedicated to exploring responsible marketing themes. Each week, I'm delighted to be joined by a leading expert to uncover insights and strategies that foster ethical yet impactful marketing practices. So today, I'm delighted to be joined by Katelyn Prendiville, the co-founder and CEO of SeedCulture, a software company on a mission to upskill, engage, and empower people and teams in the sustainability journeys. Katelyn spent the first part of her career as a marketer, helping a range of companies to build and grow their digital presence. In 2017, she started her own equestrian apparel e-commerce business, which quickly expanded across Australia and internationally. Realizing that she had an opportunity to use business as a force for good, she made a conscious effort to embed social and environmental responsibility across the business. Part of this process, it required a personal learning journey and mindset change, which eventually led her to want to dedicate her career to the field of sustainability. From there, she started SeedCulture as a way to help others progress in their own learning and impact journeys, whilst helping businesses to hit their sustainability goals and ultimately become a force for good. Katelyn, it's lovely to be joined by you today, I should say.
Thanks, Charlie. It's an honor to be here.
Excellent. So, guys, as normal, we start each podcast by picking a theme or a topic to sort of base our conversation around. And this week, we've decided to pull an article from Reagan.com, which looked into some of the experiences and lessons shared by whistleblowers from the high-profile cases of Theranos and Enron. The article looks at a couple of individuals who offer kind of really valuable advice as communication professionals, highlighting the critical role of ethics and moral responsibility in corporate communications. In the article, they stress the importance of communicators being vigilant, questioning practices within their organizations, not blindly idolizing leaders, and understanding the complexities of financial statements to prevent ethical breaches. Their insights in this article sort of serve as a guide for maintaining integrity in the challenging, pressurized landscape of corporate decision-making and communication. So obviously, neither the Theranos or the Enron cases are particularly newsworthy or topical or immediate, if you like. But I certainly think some of the interesting themes that drawn out of the nature of the whistleblowers' experience are certainly things that would be worth exploring with you today, Katelyn. So first of all, just to kick things off, what was your take on the article? What's your thoughts on those two cases? And in particular, or specifically, what's your take upon the role of a whistleblower within a corporate communications scenario?
Yeah, I think it was a fascinating article. It really touched on a lot of the different sort of, cases that we've seen over the last few years when it comes to these big rise and falls of these companies, also these individuals that people have really looked up to, aspired to, put on a pedestal, and then come crashing down just as quickly. So I found it really fascinating on a number of different fronts. Obviously, the comm side is super critical to this particular article. It's showing, the role that individuals can play in this corporate setting in, unearthing some of these practices that are taking place that are otherwise sort of swept under the rug. So yeah, I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned. There's some good tips in there around how to actually, bring some of this to light, some of the channels you can do that. Also, how to do that without really putting yourself too much at risk. Yeah, lots of good lessons there, I think.
And just to kind of pick up, I guess, on one of those points there, when you read through the article and got a sense of what was going on, I think before we actually started the podcast, we were talking a little bit about Elizabeth Holmes and about the kind of the media's sort of whipping up of the hype, if you like, of her, and then obviously the downfall that occurred thereafter. Like, this obviously article was looking in particular at the impact of internal comms, or looking at the influence of internal comms. What's your take on the sort of relationship between the media and then the way that an organization approaches their internal comms and the relationship between the two?
I think so. Obviously, the media has its own take on things. It's not always correct. I think the role of a good comms person is to really provide that clarity, provide that authenticity towards, this is what's actually happening, and really, providing the right set of information and facts that the media can hopefully then do the right thing with. That's not always the case. But yeah, I think the lesson here is that for comms folks, it's really, you've got to be able to lean into when you feel like something's not quite right. If you feel like there's something missing from the story, really lean into that and follow those breadcrumbs. But equally be able to, recognize when those breadcrumbs are actually pebbles or rocks. That's part of your job. So yeah, I think it's really for comms people, it's cultivating that sense of curiosity, skepticism as well. You've got to be able to sort of uncover where you feel those unethical or those fraudulent practices might be happening, ask the right questions, go to the right people. So once you have those set of facts, then you can kind of you can craft the story on your side. And if that's coming across in the right way, again, with that clarity and authenticity, then there aren't going to be, those red or amber flags that the media can then dig into and sort of run away with. And that's actually what happened with Enron is, they were telling this story. People were really, sucked into it. People wanted to believe it. Same with Theranos. And then, there were a few sort of red flags with Enron in regards to their, their financial statements that then, the media picked up and started to dig into, and it all sort of spiraled from there. So I think it's all about owning that narrative and not giving the media something that they can, hook into and run away with. And at the end of the day, that comes down to having an ethical organization in the first place.
Katelyn, that was absolutely brilliant. I have to say, I think we've already got our headline for this episode, which is something related to breadcrumbs, pebbles, and stones, because that was absolutely brilliant. No, I think that was so brilliantly put in terms of ultimately it comes back to just being an ethical entity. But if we were trying to unpick some of those themes, one of the things that I think came out of that article that was mentioned was how, for example, Enron, you had a situation whereby you had obviously incredibly bright people that ultimately a number of bright people who ended up going to prison, not because they necessarily were the ones that instigated the fraud or were the ones that enacted it in any way, but they simply were not asking questions anymore. They didn't prise into, well, guys, why are we doing it like this? And I think, again, one of the interesting things that one of the whistleblowers mentioned, or the Enron whistleblower mentioned, was that she was taught something, I think, in her career where she said, there's nothing in business that is so complicated that someone shouldn't be able to explain to you. It's sort of it clearly and simply. And so when you have a bright person sat in front of you sharing a report and it just does not make sense, and they're saying, no, but it does make sense, you should be able to press them on, no, I'm not clear. I need you to talk me through this and take it through step by step. So it almost comes back to that kind of having that, I guess, inner confidence, perhaps, as a comms professional within an organization, to say, if you want me to be able to share this narrative and this message, I need to be able to fully understand it. And so that's the starting place for those kind of internal discussions. Is that, in your impression, your experience, is that something that's key? Is that confidence to question?
Yeah, and I think if you can adopt the mindset where you understand that this is actually part of your job to ask those questions, and ultimately it's going to get you to an outcome where things are moving forward for the better. You're actually helping to drive a more transparent and ethical organization. I think that can really help with that mindset. Obviously, it's hard when you're presented with these figures who, I think I remember reading somewhere about Enron that one of the first shareholder meetings that the CEO, forgot his name already, was holding, and someone, was one of the first times he was questioned about the financial statements, and an analyst said to him, look, why are you only sharing your income statement? Why are you not sharing the balance sheet or the cash flow statement? And he just turned around and said, you're an asshole. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to swear on this.
We encourage it. Go on, Katelyn.
But, yeah, that was the reaction. And this is the CEO of, I think at the time they were like the 7th biggest company in the US, and it's intimidating, and you've got to kind of put yourself out there. But I think, like anything, when you can bring it back to why you're doing it in the first place, and really sort of think beyond that immediate reaction to what's the long-term goal here.
And having and drawing upon that case study, and again, I the name of the Enron CEO at the time escapes me as well. Let's call him X. But let's say in that scenario, is it from your perspective, is it therefore a cultural thing that senior leaders, that's those C-level execs within an organization, really need to set that precedent of enabling junior members of an organization to be encouraged to ask those difficult questions, with a view that as an ethical company, we want to highlight these things before they become a bigger issue, and therefore we need that kind of questioning at the heart of what we're doing? Is that, in your experience, in your interpretation, is that the key? Is from an executive senior leadership perspective that this is integrated as part of the cultural norm?
Yeah, I think that's an incredibly important part of it. I think there's probably a bunch of other factors in there, but culture is so important here. And not everyone is willing to step up into the role as a whistleblower or an activist or whatever you want to term it. So creating a culture where people feel safe, they feel like there's that psychological safety, they can speak up, there aren't going to be huge repercussions on their career or their ability to move forward in the company. So yeah, really creating that safe space where people are encouraged to speak, not just to their colleagues, but to their superiors or whoever it is in the company, and yeah, really cultivate that culture of transparency. And ultimately, that's going to help you become a better company, because that's how innovations are identified. That's how people identify risks or opportunities. So yeah, I think it was Peter Drucker that said culture eats strategy for breakfast, and I couldn't agree more. I think there's just there's so much value in having a culture where people are encouraged to speak up and be active participants in their company's strategy.
Can I ask you, Katelyn, that was absolutely brilliant, and you're giving us too many headlines here for different. We might have to get you back on for other episodes where we can capture some of these other titles. But let's say, and kind of speaking to our listeners here, let's say that there's an organization that somebody's working for currently that doesn't have that kind of cultural norm at the heart of what they do, but you've got somebody who is sat there thinking, do you know what, things just don't add up. And although I'm getting, pressure from left, right, and center from my other colleagues suggesting that I'm not getting it, or, that this is just the way that we've always done things, or any of these kind of norms that come from that kind of quite toxic environment that you would have that would mitigate or would exacerbate the potential for unethical practice. What would your advice be to that person in terms of how they can go about kind of, enacting upon their concerns?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I think, when you don't have that culture there, or that sense that you can speak up without consequences, that's where that sort of confidence and that courage really plays in there. But I think, in general, it's kind of a question of upskilling yourself on, firstly, what constitutes an unethical practice. is there a code of conduct or an ethics policy that you can refer to there? So ultimately, it's sort of about knowing thy industry, knowing thy business model, really understand what's driving the engine of your company, and then sort of mixing that with the understanding of what is an unethical practice here in our context. And then, that'll really help you to come across as well-researched and knowledgeable, not just about, your part of the company, but the broader business in general. I think anytime you want to kind of bring something to light, you want to be well-researched and you want to sort of be able to roll that up to the company's broader strategy, business model, because then you can really put forward a good case and people will listen to you. I also think it's about, identifying things that you might be uniquely positioned to put forward. So if that's a specific role or exposure to the business that you have, or even if it's, a set of skills that you might uniquely have in the business, a blend of skills, think about how you can use those to bring some of this information to light. And also think about who to bring this to, what channels, and who you feel safe talking to, I guess.
Well, that was absolutely brilliant. We're going to ask you for a bit of advice for other junior marketeers out there, but I think you've just given a pretty fantastic first piece of advice there on anybody that's got concerns, I guess, about the practice that's going on within an organization and kind of what to do next. That was absolutely fantastic. Just moving slightly in terms of just still looking at this particular case, but in particular looking at kind of the glorification of leadership and the impact of that. Again, this isn't, I know before, again, we spoke about, I think you were at an event once, weren't you? And you got compared to Holmes, didn't you? And talk us through that. You were trying to sort of recapture or reclaim the black, what's it called? Turtleneck, weren't you? Is that right?
Yeah. So I feel like the black turtleneck has a bad name, particularly when blonde-haired females don it. So I decided that it was time to reclaim that. I'm not sure it's the best idea to do that when you're pitching to investors, but in other contexts, I'd say go for it.
I love it. I think it's a very edgy way of presenting. This the new dawn of the black turtleneck. So I speak for fellow turtleneck wearers out there when I say that I think it's great what you're doing. It really is. But to ask you a question, I mean to be serious with it. I mean, you are a female, happen to be blonde founder of a business. How much in terms of the work that you're doing at SeedCulture, when you're looking at kind of the personal brand, if you like, and the opportunities to leverage that, as Katelyn, what's the thinking that goes on specifically related to how you present you and your story relating to SeedCulture and how you look to use that as a promotional, opportunity? Talk us through your thinking around that.
I just find it so fascinating that we really have a culture as a society where we put charismatic leaders up on a pedestal. But as I said before, we love just as much to tear them down when things go south. So obviously Elizabeth Holmes and Theranos, Adam Newman, WeWork, Sam Bankman-Fried, FTX, the list is endless. And I think, sometimes, like was in the case with Elizabeth, we really want to believe them. What they're saying is really compelling and grounded in just enough reality to be convincing. I think there's also a bunch of human psychology at play where we kind of see other smart folks put their trust in a person and think that, if they trust this person, then I should as well. I think that's wrong. Ultimately, I've always shied away from this idea that there's, there's this all-knowing person that should be presented as the hero of the company. I think, as you said, having a strong leader and that personal brand can be important in telling the story and the vision of the company. But yeah, if you're relying on that as the sole way that you're rallying folks around your vision, and doing so without any scrutiny of that person, then I think you're really in trouble. And I think as well, as a leader, if you're not staying humble, then basically you're going to become blind to your weak spots. You won't bring them to light, and you won't bridge them with the right people around you. And again, back to culture, you'll create a culture where questioning leadership is frowned upon or not desirable. People are afraid to speak up. So yeah, it's bad business strategy. Don't do it.
Love it. So would it be fair to kind of summarize from that's essentially that culture, if you like, if you were going to have the benefits associated with having that strong leader, that charismatic leader that we can leverage essentially their personal brand to a certain degree to benefit the company, then we also need to be super aware of the fact that culture starts with them. And so if they have a sort of a propensity not to want to be questioned, not to want their authority to be brought into any form of question, as I say, that's the place to start. They need to develop an openness and a humility as leaders in order to facilitate that throughout the rest of the organization. Would that be a fair synopsis of what you went through there?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think sort of giving that space for people to feel like, our company isn't centered around Elizabeth Holmes, or our company isn't centered around this one charismatic person. It's, they're there at the helm, if you will, but they're not the company. You want to create a space where people can feel that sense of ownership, and that if that person were to go away or be hit by a bus tomorrow, then that's going to continue that vision and that that inspiration and that mobilization of people around what you're trying to do, what you're trying to create in the world, the value that you're trying to create, and the purpose of the company. So yeah, I think it's creating a culture where people can step up and own that themselves.
Having had that why, that vision strongly set by that leader, but that ultimately that is something that can be adopted and essentially taken on in the form of identity throughout the rest of the organization and individuals working for it.
Yeah, and I think a great example of this is the carpet company Interface, which had a really visionary leader, Ray Anderson, who unfortunately passed away a few years ago. But his vision around creating the most sustainable carpet company and really inspiring people and influencing the broader market to start adopting more sustainable practices and really driving systems level change, that penetrated the entire company. That's something that has continued to this day. It's a legacy he's left and a culture that's really kind of grown on its own. And I think that to me is what's inspiring, and that's what I'd love to do with SeedCulture.
Very good. And I have to say, I'm just gonna plug, as you were mentioning that, Katelyn. Another company that springs to mind is Riverford Organic, based here in the UK, the veg box company. Who Guy, who's there, I can't remember his last name, but Guy, who's his founder, I think has done a similarly good job of taking his own personal drive and determination and points of view and really instilling that at the heart of the business and what they're attempting to do as an organization. So yeah, really, really fascinating. You did though mention SeedCulture, and I think what I'd now like to do is just sort of move the conversation on and just learn a little bit more from you about I guess how some of these themes around internal comms and how to go about implementing effective, ethical, and sort of culturally supportive internal comm strategies. It would be fascinating to learn a bit more about how you guys at SeedCulture are helping to support that, perhaps, from the sustainability perspective.
Yeah, so I like to think that we are empowering people to identify where this might be happening within their organization, but also, be part of solutions. So that's really key to what we're building is, identification is one thing, but then how can you change that and how can you be part of, that positive solution to that? So what we're trying to create here is an environment where it's not about shaming people or shaming a company, but it's, empowering them to then be part of that collective force driving those solutions. I think in sustainability, it's such a nuanced and complex, interconnected subject, and there's always going to be trade-offs. And what we try to sort of encourage people to think about is, it's not about perfection. It's about progressing on a journey that has a clear and ambitious goal, while staying kind of grounded in the practicalities of bringing that to life. So again, like from a comms perspective, I think this is all again about mindset. You really want to cultivate that mindset where, again, in the sustainability context, people feel like they know enough about sustainability, the global and the industry level, the business model level, that they can, contribute in a meaningful way to that sort of strategy. But then it's also, how that then rolls up to their day to day, and they can feel empowered to be part of those sustainability initiatives. So, mindset around sustainability, it's about awareness and it's about kind of connecting those dots between what you do as an employee and what the company is trying to do. Obviously, that's all in a super positive context. So if you're thinking about this more from the identifying unethical practices, that's a different kettle of fish. But ultimately, it's the same principle of, give people the information, give them a forum or a place where they can put forward what they're seeing, or, if they've identified something that's not quite right, or an opportunity. It might be something that they see, hey, here's something our company can, we can get into this market, or we can adopt this new sustainable packaging, or learn from, what this company and this other industry is doing. There's so much opportunity for employees to be part of that. So creating the channel where they can do that, where it's seen by the right people. So our platform's sort of structured so that if people are putting forward these ideas, it's then, the right ones float to the top, and it's seen by the right people, whether that's the sustainability leader or the CEO. And then they can decide, hey, is this something we want to act on? We want to implement this initiative. We want to address this risk. I think it's really about bringing that mindset to life, but also, something that tech platforms can do is capture this information. We don't do it anonymously because, again, we're sort of more about the capturing those positive ideas and solutions, as opposed to, hey, this is something wrong that's happening or unethical. Other platforms might do that in an anonymous way. We're more about sort of driving that social proof and that recognition of peers, which is why it's all, you can kind of see what everyone else is doing in the platform and hopefully be inspired by that.
And I was going to say, Kate, coming back to our point, the point that we were raising when we were looking at Thermos and Enron, we were talking about the role that C-level or senior executives play in setting that sort of precedent, if you like, in terms of the way that we communicate. In light of the fact that within SeedCulture, we are providing kind of social proof and recognition of what everybody within the organization is doing. Are you noticing with the organizations that you're working with that there is that commonality in terms of the senior leadership and the attitude that they have towards, support of their staff and the encouragement of these ways of communicating and engaging with one another? Is that, and perhaps well, first of all, is that the case? And secondly, would you mind expanding a little bit upon, what those kind of mindsets, sort of norms are of the C-level kind of people that you're working with within these organizations?
Yeah, I'd say that's absolutely the case with the companies we're working with. I think there's probably a bit of, the companies we're targeting with our platform. Initially, we're going after companies that have an existing sustainability commitment or some kind of, dedication to sustainable practices that's evidenced in, a sort of target or pledges that they've made. So I'd say there's a little bit of self-selection happening there, but as well, given that what we're doing is more about building that bottom-up momentum within a workforce, it's really important to have that top-down support in order for these initiatives to then be successful. So thankfully, the companies that we're working with, they understand that, and they have that clear buy-in and commitment at the leadership and exec level. How that translates is that people see that, hey, this is coming from the top. This is clearly a strategic agenda for our company. Therefore, if I'm involved in this, even if they're not inherently or intrinsically motivated to be, contribute towards sustainability or sustainable solutions, they can still see that there's a net benefit for them to be part of that because it's potentially beneficial for their career. They can have that leadership visibility. So yeah, I'd say some of the norms and behaviors we see in these leaders is that they really understand that this is a transformational opportunity, that we're at the beginning of this huge, wave of systemic transformation. It's sort of like the digital revolution in a way, where every aspect of our society is going to be changed by this and changed for the better. But I think there's still a bit of a limited awareness of just how much we need to change, and the fact that we actually need to reduce emissions by 50% by 2030. Like that's huge. So I think, the leaders that we work with that understand how powerful this is going to be, they have that climate and sustainability literacy. They can see how this rolls up to their industry, to what they're doing, the very way that they create value. And they also know that they need to be constantly rethinking that this is shifting so quickly that they can't rest on their laurels. They really need to be agile. I hate that word, but I said it anyway. Apologies.
We'll bleep it out. Don't worry. We won't bleep out arsehole, but we'll definitely bleep out agile. We can't be having that on our podcast. Go on, carry on.
Apologies. I used to be a management consultant, so it just sometimes it just comes out. They know that they need to kind of constantly have that innovation mindset, and that it's not going to come from just them. They need to hear the voices of everyone in their company, and the people that are on the ground interacting with customers, with the community. Those are the people that are best placed to see where these opportunities are coming from and the risks again. I think that kind of clear buy-in, the awareness of this transformation and how it affects their company, and then as well how they're communicating that to everyone in the organization. So not sort of doing it in a way where, and I think the broader comms community can sometimes be at risk of this, which is communicating sustainability or climate in a really doomist way, instead of showing the opportunity here and really painting an inspiring vision that people can see, they can feel, and they want to be a part of. So I'd say the best leaders that we work with and that I've seen are able to bring those factors together, and do it in what feels like a really genuine and authentic way, and then that cascades across the entire organization, and that sort of builds the conditions for success of that bottom-up movement to then kind of meet that top-down buy-in, and unlock those outcomes that they're looking for.
It's absolutely fascinating. There's so many things to potentially pick out of that, but I just want to ask a broad question of, if you have what you've just described, we've got an engaged leader who comes along and the organization's got a clear sustainability kind of strategy, or has certainly started sort of implementing sustainability to be at the sort of heart of what they do. What's the vision for the impact of SeedCulture? What does the organization look like on day one? And having used your platform and having engaged with the process after X period of time, what's it ultimately? What's the organization going to look like at the end, or not at the end, but at that point in time?
Yeah, so I think a stat that always gets me is that 93% of companies that have a net zero target are currently on track to fail that. So no matter how much they might want to, sort of embed this across their business and to do the right thing, it's just not happening, and it's not happening fast enough. So I think the thing that we're seeing is that a lot of companies have addressed the low-hanging fruit. They've transitioned to renewable energy. They've started to kind of transform their Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions, which are sort of within their direct sphere of influence. But then they're starting to see that, hey, there's a whole bucket of things that are happening in our company that, it's not in the direct remit of it's in the remit, but it's not in the influence of the sustainability team or whoever owns sustainability to actually, be able to change. So obviously the workforce and their behaviors, how they're going about their day to day, that's one part, as is the sort of supply chain, folks that they're engaging with, that they're purchasing from, and the wider value chain in the way of customers, consumers, the public, community. Sort of thinking about it in that way, most companies are only looking at those, what's in their direct sphere of influence that the sustainability team can go in and change. So what we're trying to do here is really look at, how do you, first of all, empower those sustainability leaders to upskill the rest of the workforce. That's a key pillar, because a lot of people think they know what sustainability is, and there's these perceptions of, hey, it's recycling, or it's tree planting, when actually it's it's a whole set of topics. It's really, there's so much to unpack, and it really depends on the business as to what is material and what's not. So building that literacy and that understanding at a high level, but also, again, specific to their company and specific to their role. Again, someone in procurement has a very different set of things that they can address and be aware of than someone in marketing or in IT. So kind of making that role specific as well is something we're trying to help the sustainability leader to do and to scale. So these folks usually aren't trained in behavioral science or in education or how to kind of mobilize people. That's not their bread and butter, nor should it be. Well, maybe a little bit, but we want to help these people to do that in a way that they don't have to go and become experts in this. They can do it through our platform. They can also start to work with the marketing and the comms teams to bridge that gap, and to really, kind of look at how we can effectively do this in the context of our company. That's really, I guess, a key goal of our platform. And maybe a simpler way to do it, to explain it, is that, we want to create a world where every employee knows what sustainability is, why it matters in the context of their business, and most importantly, how they can contribute to it every day. So that's,
There's a term, Katelyn, I'm sorry for cutting you off, because you have such a lovely way of the poise with which you describe things is brilliant. It's almost the term mobilization comes into mind from my point of view. I don't know if that's something that you guys have played with internally, but it is, it's that awareness and education, but it's what ultimately, you're inspired to do with that awareness and education, and how you go about then as an individual understanding the role that you can play. I guess, is that a term that you would use to describe kind of what you're ultimately looking to achieve?
Yeah, I think it's the mobilization and it's the activation of people. I think lots of studies have shown that there's a huge amount of awareness and concern for example, climate change. I think it was the BEIS recent study found that 85% of folks in the UK are either hugely concerned or concerned about climate change. Like, it's not that there's not concern and a desire to do something. It's that value action gap, which we talk about quite a lot, because we're really trying to embed principles of behavioral science and psychology into everything that we do in this platform and our general approach and ethos. So looking at that value action gap, people might have an intention to do something, but then translating that into action is really hard. There's a bunch of psychological barriers that are preventing us from acting on these things, whether that's in our personal lives or our work lives. So part of that mobilization is helping people to overcome those barriers. I guess that's probably more the activation part. But then the mobilization part is then turning that into, or leveraging the social momentum of a group of people doing something and caring about something visibly, and using that to drive that social diffusion of behaviors. I think there's so much here that we can talk about, but essentially it's how you bring people together and inspiring them around a vision, building that sense of self-efficacy, or what I do makes a difference here and that I can actually do it. And then there's that sense of collective efficacy where, hey, by all of us doing this together, we can actually have a meaningful impact, and it's not all doom and gloom. That's really at the heart of our approach.
It's for anyone, I should say, that is now, as I'm sure you are, absolutely fascinated by SeedCulture and all the things that you're doing, because of, I have to say, just how brilliantly you've talked things through there. What should they do? What can they do, Katelyn, in terms of next actions to explore what you guys are doing further?
Do you mean in terms of what we're doing as a company, or what they can do in their role?
I mean, if we've got listeners who have heard what you guys are doing and are inquisitive to learn more and perhaps demo, etc., what practically can they do next to kind of engage with you guys?
Yeah, get in touch. We'd love to chat. Our website is seedculture.com. And we actually have a sort of trial team environment where we can get folks set up. You can play around in sort of a sandbox environment, see what it's all about. We're really happy to chat through whether you are a sustainability leader or have the desire to be, or whether you're just someone that thinks, hey, our company should maybe be looking at this. Get in touch. We can sort of either help you pitch this to the right person in your company, or sort of show you how it all works and how it could benefit the company.
Brilliant. And I should say to all our listeners out there, we're obviously going to include links, etc., in descriptions and articles and all the rest of it. So, Katelyn, that was absolutely fantastic. Last question before we let you go. We always ask our guests to provide kind of one piece or their top piece of advice that they would offer to any junior marketeers out there interested in kind of responsible practice. Could you perhaps share just what one bit of advice that you might have for that group?
I'll try to keep it to one, or at least one theme. So I think the theme would be bold. We really don't have time to be doing anything but bold sort of actions here, both when it comes to calling out irresponsible practice, but also in selling the vision for the opportunity around sustainability. And yeah, again, on that theme, don't underestimate your influence. And don't forget what your core strength as a marketer is, that's rallying and motivating people to do something. So yeah, I think lean into that, use your creativity, use your ability to uncover insights from data, use your communication and engagement expertise, and use them as a force for good, use them to drive change. And I think that's such a powerful thing that people are underemphasizing in this broader climate and sustainability solution suite. But also, yeah, in the context of calling out bad practice, we've got to be able to apply what we're good at and use it in a positive way. And yeah, I think be bold, go for it.
Be bold, go for it. We've had some absolute headlines in this, Katelyn, and I have to say, well, it's great to finish on one. Thank you so much for joining us for today's session. Really appreciate you taking the time to do so. So thank you. But we'll leave it there.
Amazing. Thank you so much for the time and for inviting me.
Thanks, Katelyn. Thank you.